Chapter 17. Prescriptions for Sadhana. Swami spoke forcefully, artfully, but in everyday terms. Indeed, his language was incisively simple, and even his profound Nachintanai was couched in common vocabulary, unlike the classical verses of Tirumurai and earlier saints. Nachintanai is a personal diary of sorts, recording Swami's experiences, his realizations, his anguish, and his hopes. The language and style are straightforward. His poems on Murugan and Shiva have such a feel of familiarity that you could reach across the page and touch them. He talks to the lizard and the peacock with the confidence that they too can help his quest. He uses folk songs and dances, indicating that he was communing with the common man. He goads us on to the feet of the Guru on the Sanmarga, reminding us often that is what a human birth is for. Once a man highly educated in Siddhanta lore and philosophy came to him anticipating a philosophical discussion, hoping to employ all the pedantry at his disposal. At the same time, a simple man arrived. They both offered fruits and flowers, then prostrated. Swami addressed the simple man, who now sat before him next to the philosopher. "How have you been?" he asked. "I've been all right, Swami. Everything is coming along in a good way for myself and my family." "It's good to hear that your family is all right, too. How many children do you have now?" "3, Swami, 2 boys and a girl." "And how much money do you make?" 200 rupees a month, Swami." "Oh, that's not very much money for what you do, is it?" "No, Swami, but we get along all right. We have 2 cows, and we grow our own food." "That's fine, but you should get more money for your work." "I know, Swami, but what can I do?" "A man who works as hard as you do, and as well as you do, should receive more money. You should do something about it." "Yes, Swami." Growing more and more impatient, the philosopher wondered, when is Swami going to finish this tedious chatter and talk with me about things more in his realm? Swami turned to him and rejoined sharply, "You should be paying attention to what we are saying. We're discussing profound spiritual matters." In Swami's presence, such ordinary events seemed full of import and splendor, and little miracles seemed ordinary and natural. Usually someone would bring food each day, generally enough to feed 6 or 7 people. Swami would ask that food be given to everyone, even if 20 or 30 were present. It would always reach around adequately without anyone asking how food prepared for a few could feed so many. Mother Earth is hungry. Swami took great joy in feeding people. Often he would not allow a person to leave without taking a meal in his presence. Sometimes he would set about cooking large quantities of food in the middle of the day, sending out for fresh vegetables and asking for big cooking vessels to be brought in from all over the neighborhood. He would build large fires in front of his hut and start cooking. Some people thought he was crazy. It was no special occasion, and no one had been invited. What was he planning to do with so much food? But Swami went right on cooking, being careful that everything was tasty and well prepared. He would say, "There are so many hungry people, we must make sure they are fed. That is our duty." "But Swami," one would plead, "how will they know to come? After all, it is a rather odd time for a feast." "Don't worry," he said, "they will come." Sure enough, when the food was ready, many people were there. Swami would sing and sing, then serve them all. Sometimes they would come for his yagam and stay until late in the evening. Swami also gave food to the temple. He would buy huge sacks of rice and have devotees take them to Nalar temple and distribute them, 1 measure of rice for each person. He also saw that each was given a handful of vegetables and a few coins. He said he could foresee a time when there would be little food on the earth, and he wanted to do his part to alleviate the problem, if only in the microcosm. Huge feedings for the less fortunate were held regularly, usually at temples, and regarded as especially meritorious, a good way to earn punya and good merit. Yogaswami not only arranged these himself, but urged his devotees to follow his example. Fires were built in the sand, and heavy metal pots, 1 meter high and 1.5 meters wide, were set upon strategically placed rocks to boil rice and dal. All would sing Nachintanai as the eager guests, including indigent holy men and women, slowly gathered for what would be their one hearty meal in a week or more. When the food was ready, men with 4-foot-long wooden shovels would move the rice into large mats, swiftly making a soft white mound as tall as a man. Thousands of sadhus and needy folks sat cross-legged on woven kajan mats. There would be dozens of rows, with up to 50 in each, long paired lines a couple meters apart, facing one another. Those gathered would be served en masse with stunning efficiency, 20 to 30 men rushing down the aisles, deftly dolloping steaming rice, dal and curry with big spoons onto the open banana leaves. Within minutes, thousands of meals were served, and as soon as the first sitting had finished, a second would take its place. Afterwards, the banana leaves were fed to the cows, with families of crows snatching their lot between bovine bites. In this discipline of feeding, many of Swami's devotees recognized a sadhana he was developing for them. In the decades after his Mahasamadhi, they fed tens of thousands of hungry people at Nalur Temple and at other places around Jaffna, which they continued to do down the years. On one occasion, such a meal was planned by Swami at his compound. Devotees came early in the morning to start cooking. Others came to sit with Swami and sing with them. Lunchtime came, and he was still heartily singing, so deeply absorbed that no one wanted to disturb him. They all just sang. Others sat outside and listened. Everyone was satisfied. They were drinking in his darshan, and no one wanted to disrupt that flow with matters so mundane as eating. Hours after lunch should have been served, Yogaswami stopped singing and fell quiet for a while. Just as one or two people were thinking of breaking that silence to suggest that Swami might wish to eat now, he asked several devotees to chant from the Upanishads in sonorous Sanskrit. They chanted and chanted and chanted, intoning the timeless teachings of the self. Swami sat in silence, blissfully enjoying the fervor and serenity of the chanting. Transported to the times of the rishis, he would say. Everyone felt his ecstasy, and turning inward, touched into those sweet realms themselves. At about 4 in the afternoon, the chanters paused, sensing that people were growing anxious about lunch. Not wanting to disrupt Swami's mood, they asked softly if perhaps they should stop chanting, since many present did not understand Sanskrit. Swami decreed that it was not important for everyone to understand the words. The tones of the words and the consciousness of the chant would carry the teachings to all. Whether they understood with their intellect or not, the mantras continued. Finally, at about 5 p.m., he said, "Before we can partake of our prasadam, I shall ask 11 strong men here to dig a deep square hole in the ground." They stepped forward, and he indicated the spot where they should dig. Shovels were obtained from homes nearby, and the digging commenced. All waited patiently for his will to be fulfilled, the stomachs growling, the mouths watering at the luscious fragrances of the hot rasam and the freshly boiled rice, 5 perfectly spiced curries, chutneys, kulambu, yogurt, and delicious sweet payasam. It was a real feast. Finally, just before dusk, the pit was completed, and the great saint indicated that it was time to serve the food. "Come, children, surround this pit," he said. 200 or 300 people stepped forward and surrounded the 10 by 10 foot hole. Women and children were sitting in the front, and the men standing in the back, all wondering what he was going to say, and hoping he would not delay any longer with the feast. He announced, "Now we shall serve our prasadam." He called forward 2 of the huskiest of the 11 men, the strongest and biggest, and commanded, "Serve the rice," bringing the entire pot. It was a huge brass pot containing nearly 400 pounds of rice. By this time many had left, as they had been cooking all morning and singing all afternoon. Only the most devout had remained to see the outcome. When the day began, 1,000 had come. The preparations were for a very big crowd. "Now," he said, "pour the rice in the middle of the pit." Banana leaves had been laid carefully at the bottom of the pit to form a giant serving plate. The crowd was aghast. "Pour it into the pit." "Don't hesitate," he commanded. Those stunned, the men obeyed Yogaswami without question, dropping the huge mass of steaming rice into the middle of the banana leaves. He told one man, "Bring the eggplant curry." To another he said, "Go get the potato curry." We must make this a full and auspicious offering. As all the curries were neatly placed around the rice, everyone was wondering, are we to eat together out of the pit? Is this what the Guru has in mind? Then the kulambu sauce was poured over the middle of the rice. 5 pounds of salt was added on the side. Sweet mango and ginger chutneys were placed in the proper way. One by one, each of the mouth-watering preparations was placed in the pit. Much to the dismay of those gathered, after all the food had been served, the Satguru stood up and declared, "People, all of you participate, come forward." They immediately thought, finishing his sentence in their minds, to eat together this delicious meal you have been waiting for all day as a family of Shishyas. But he had something else in mind, and directed, "Pick up the 11 shovels, shovel some dirt over this delicious meal, and then pass your shovel on to the next person. We have fed our Mother Earth, who has given so generously of her abundance, all these many years to this large Shiavite community. Now we are sacrificing our prasadam as a precious heartfelt gift. Mother Earth is hungry. She gets little back. We take all. Let this be a symbol to the world and to each of us that we must sacrifice what we want most." In this way, Satguru Yogaswami began the first earth worship ceremony in northern Ceylon. He taught a lesson of tapas and sacrifice, of fasting and giving and fasting. By now the hour was late, very late. After touching his feet and receiving the mark of Shiva from him in the form of vibhuti, holy ash on their forehead, the devotees returned to their homes. It was too late to cook a hot meal, lest the neighbors smell the smoke and know that mischief was afoot. We are sure that a few, if not many, satisfied themselves with a few ripe bananas, while pondering the singular lesson that Satguru had taught, where all words are silence. In May of 1953, Mr. A. Thiliampalam of Sangarathai, Kodai, gave his youngest daughter in marriage. Having completed his familial obligations, he submitted papers for early retirement from government service 4 days later. The following day, Swami visited his residence and thundered, "Thiliampalam, you are not to retire yet. You still have a vital task to perform. Go tomorrow to Jaffna and start the building planning and supervision of the Shivathandan Nilayam with a proper meditation hall upstairs." Earlier in the year, Swami had established a formal religious body called the Shivathandan Society, holding the first general meeting to form a managing committee nominated by Yogaswami to manage the affairs of the Nilayam. Many of the Swami's council of rogues were present. As became the pattern each month, puja and bhajan were held, then a meeting followed by dinner served to all present. In 1954, the facility was completed and ceremoniously inaugurated. Yogaswami's sandalwood Tiruvadi, which he kept at his hut for 2 weeks for blessings, were installed in the meditation hall. Author S. Ampikaipakan wrote, "It is apt that Shivathandan Foundation was located in Vanarpanai, the hub of many Shaiva religious activities. We will understand the object for the foundation if we look at the plot plan of the building. In the Shivathandan Foundation plan, we see the Puranam Mandapam, meditation mandapam, restrooms for the followers, kitchen and washroom facilities in the Puranam Mandapam, Puranam story and music discourses, recitation of Tirumurai, and memorization of Nachintanai were conducted. In the upstairs, in meditation mandapam, puja for Tiruvadai, holy sandals, is done. Silence is always observed there. At the time of holy feet puja, the bell rings, camphor light showing and flower submission is done, and complete silence was observed throughout this time. Swami strictly designed the Nilayam as a place of meditation and worship. Swami had 3 sayings posted on the wall to be read as one climbed the steps to the meditation hall. Sol elam maunam, all words are in silence. Sayal yavum maunam, all doing is in silence. Elam nan nauna naraive, everything is perfect within silence, and he posted in Tamil 5 modes of conduct. Devotees should wash their mouth, hands, and feet well at the inner entrance and apply vibhuti on the forehead before stepping into the prayer halls of the Nilayam. Devotees should strictly confine themselves to their assigned duties in the Nilayam, without interfering with other devotees. Devotees should maintain absolute purity physically, as well as wholehearted spiritual purity within themselves. Devotees should maintain high discipline while the chanting of Tirumurai and Puranam is in progress at the Nilayam, without any form of disturbance to other fellow devotees. Shivathandan Nilayam's main observances are Shivadaya, meditation, and chanting, with discussions related to Shaivism and Nachintanai only. Discussion of non-religious and any other worldly matters is strictly prohibited. Inthumati Amma writes, Swami was adamant that the rules be followed without fail to maintain the sanctity of the center. If this center does not provide these blessings and deteriorates, then break it down. There is no loss by that action. He explained that the puja and chanting of religious songs in the Purana hall creates the mood for meditation. Singing and chanting are done because one cannot just be. T. Shiva Yogapathy shares the following narrative about Yoga Swami's hands-on management. When Sanda Swami resided in the Shivathandan Center, German Swami and another European Swami stayed with him for a few days. The conduct of the latter two was not in accordance with the rules of the center. Further, their association was detrimental to Sanda Swami's religious practices. Hence, Yoga Swami was boldly strict about getting rid of them from the center. Swami referred to himself as the watchdog of the Shivathandan Center. Its meaning is clear in this and also many other instances. To manage the Nilayam, Yoga Swami assigned Mr. Chilathurai, the headmaster of the Madhya Mahavidyalaya in Navatkuli, Jaffna. One day in 1956, Swami stopped his car at the school and summoned Chilathurai to come and get in the car. Then he announced, I am going to station you at the Shivathandan Nilayam. You are to be in charge as the permanent resident there with immediate effect. From then onward, Chilathurai served Yoga Swami in that way, managing not only this center but also a second Shivathandan Nilayam that the society established in Batticaloa. Taking up monastic life, he became known as Chilathurai Swami. He passed away in 2006 at age 92. One day, when Swami was talking with Chilathurai, they were interrupted by a noise coming from the backyard. Realizing that it was a Shivathandan engaged in cleaning the toilet, Swami roared with laughter, saying, Shiva Puja is going on there. He is the supreme Shivathandan who is washing the toilet for the comfort of the devotees of Shivathandan Nilayam. Swami stopped by often to give orders, with an umbrella under his arm and a cloth wrapped around his head, to protect him from the tropical sun. Arriving unannounced, he would call Chilathurai or others to come out. Build this, fix that, publish this, prepare rooms for guests from India. Having delivered his decrees, he turned and walked away, knowing all he had asked would be dutifully fulfilled. Swami rarely entered the Nilayam himself, but at certain times, when it was quiet, he did go inside, and once after his accident in 1961, he stayed there for 3 weeks. The bed that he used is still kept there. He often advised people who visited him to go to the Nilayam and sing hymns or chant the Vedas, or to go upstairs to the meditation hall, the all-important Dhyana Mandapam, where silence was and still is enforced. Sit quietly, he commanded. Then what you have come to me for will come to you. A plaque on the wall says it all, Summa Iru. After the Shivathandan Center was established, Swami often told devotees, Why do you come to see me? Go to the Shivathandan Center and meditate. He immortalized this message in the song entitled, Accept the Assurance of These Words. Go to the Shivathandan home and mukti win through meditation. Be at rest by keeping silent. Know this to be the mantra. Realize who is this and that man. Know that the Atma is eternal. Within you is bliss beyond compare. See that all that is truth. Follow not the senses' path, but bring them under your control. Rid yourself of cruel hatred. Vedanta and Siddhanta seek to learn. Know that there is not one wrong thing, and Om Shivayama pray. With melting heart true bliss attain. Accept the assurance of these words. Swami insisted that pujas at the Nilayam be conducted in utter simplicity. In fact, they were done and still are in total silence, with no chanting whatsoever. Aside from Tiruvadi Puja held daily in a simple way and elaborately on the first Sunday of each month, the only other events he allowed were Ardha Darshanam in December, when Lord Shiva and the soul are seen to be one, and the annual festival of Matra Shivaratri, when puja to the divine sandals is conducted in grand style. Swami admonished that no other days were to be observed. Once, when a member of the Shivathandan board expressed a desire to celebrate another festival, Swami said, "See, man, there is no permission," putting an end to the idea. After Swami's Mahasamadhi, Tiruvati Puja was also held monthly on Ayilyam, Ashlesha, Nakshatra at the two Nilayams and at his Kalumbathurai hut. That was the same nakshatra on which he installed Chalapa Swami's Tiruvadi in his hut in the 1920s, and it was also the nakshatra of Yoga Swami's Mahasamadhi. For special guests from outside Jaffna, Swami provided the Vanarapani Nilayam as a place to stay. From Tamil Nadu, 3 renowned scholars in the fields of Tamil language, English language, and Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy, Dr. T.M.P. Mahadevan, Dr. T.P. Meenachi Sundaram, and Professor A.S. Gnanasampanthan, used to visit Jaffna frequently via the 30-minute Trichy Palali air route. They came mainly to discuss philosophy with Swami at his hut, while also giving public lectures in the schools of Jaffna Peninsula. They always stayed at Shivathandan Nilayam in Jaffna as Swami's guests, following his instructions. A few years before Swami attained Mahasamadhi, he prognosticated, "Difficult times are coming. It is going to be hard to even get liquid food. Take care in cultivating food and give food to all." Articles on the greatness of the gift of feeding appeared in many issues of the Shivathandan, and action was taken to procure good fields for cultivation to ensure that the project of giving food was successfully conducted. Swami indicated the need to distribute the produce of this cultivation to all and to feed everyone. Intumathi Amar provides a glimpse of how, under Swami's direction, the Nilayam supported religious studies. 3 years after the establishment of the Shivathandan Center, 2 advertisements appeared in the Shivathandan Journal. One was about the Shivathandan Educational Fund, and the other was about those who obtained assistance from the fund. Those who obtained assistance from this fund and went to Indian universities to study Devaram music, religious studies, etc., were expected on the conclusion of their studies to spend 5 years in the center doing service, and, if they so desired, to spend more time. This illustrates that the aim of the Shivathandan Center was to direct people in the high ideals of religious knowledge. The Shaiva Siddhanta taught by Swami, the lectures on the Periya Puranam conducted in the temples by his devotees, the translation of the introductory chapter of Sir John Woodruff's The Serpent Power by Advocate Suppiya, the publication of books like Vivekachudamani, the Advaitic text by Adi Shankara, and In the Hours of Meditation, all show the spiritual ideals of the Shivathandan Center. T. Shiva Yogapathy provides details of Yoga Swami's influence on some of the spiritual heads of India's mathas and renowned religious scholars of the day. Devasigamani Arunachala Desigar Adigal, Kundrakudi Adigalar, was the spiritual head of Tamil Nadu's Kundrakudi Adinam, an ancient monastery temple complex that is among the citadels of Shaiva Siddhanta. He made numerous visits to Jaffna and Batticaloa in the 1950s and 1960s to give lectures on Shaiva Siddhanta in Shaiva temples and halls. One day in the late 1950s, when young Adigalar was in Jaffna, Mr. A. Thilayampalam, my father, and Mudaliar Sinathambi took him to Yoga Swami's ashram, where Adigalar enjoyed a valuable discussion with Swami. As a gift, Swami presented him a Nachintanai book. After leaving the hermitage, the young Swami voraciously read it from cover to cover. From that day onward, in all his lectures, he praised Swami's songs as the cream of monistic Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy. Dr. A. Lakshmana Swami Mudaliar, former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Madras, upon visiting Swami in 1955, was enamored with his uncanny ability to express complex concepts in everyday language. The renowned educator told Thilayampalam that even in India he had never met a saint of Swami's caliber, whom he revered as a treasure for humanity in this world. Swami developed a close affinity for the Ramakrishna mission, a relationship that began with his 1897 encounter with Swami Vivekananda. Swami Asangananthar of the Colombo branch made frequent visits to Jaffna for Yoga Swami's darshan. When the Ramakrishna mission of Batikolo was raising funds to establish Gurukulam at the Vanarpanai Vaitheswaram Shivan temple, Yoga Swami made the first contribution. His blessed offering is still preserved by the mission. Through the years, he encouraged men wishing to follow the monastic path to join the mission, including scholar Pandit T. Mivaganam and Swami Premathamanathar. While Yoga Swami, for undisclosed reasons, disallowed anyone wearing the Kavi robes to stay as a guest at his Shivathanda Nilayam, he made a standing exception for the Swamis of the Ramakrishna mission. Only one work to do. Yoga Swami often said, "There is only one work to do, realize the self yourself." In other words, find out who you are, or know thyself. How do you do this? You can't find the truth in 1,000 books or by listening to people talk. You must realize the self by yourself. Go inside and remain there. Then you can come down and see the world. Yoga Swami told seekers, "There is a chair at the top reserved for you. You must go and sit in that chair. From there you will see everything as one. You will know no second. That is a state unknown even by the saints and celestials. Buddha attained that state and came down to help others. Christ knew that state and also tried to bring others to it. Many others no one has heard of have known that state. That chair is there reserved for you. It is your job to occupy it. If you don't do it in this lifetime, you might do it in the next, or in the next, or in the next. It is the only work you have to do. There are those who can fly to the top like birds." Swami was a reflecting pond to anyone who came to see him. To a simple person, he talked simply and directly. He related to educated people in terms familiar to them, whether Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, or Muslim. He spoke to each through the context and vocabulary of his religion. He had a perfect command of Tamil, Sinhala, and English. When a Christian came, Swami might ask him to open the Bible at random and read aloud. Swami would interrupt to explain a passage, often relating it to the devotee's life and astounding him with knowledge of his past and future. His favorite section was the beginning of the Gospel according to John. "In the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word was with God." He would talk and talk about this teaching until he had completely unraveled it for his listener. To Buddhists, he would quote the teachings of Buddha and explain them as if he were the Buddha unfolding the path to nirvana, and to Hindus, no matter what path they followed, he would ground them firmly in the tradition they were used to. But to say that he would usually do one thing or another is not accurate. There was no usually about Yoga Swami. He had no prepared responses or stock answers to questions, problems, or situations. Wisdom and divine sight were his guidelines and his tools. If he knew you one moment, he might ignore you the next, or not even recognize you, not even know your name or face. Everyone who visited him got what he came for. Sometimes Yoga Swami would just sit in silence, then after a while announce, "Nothing is coming." He meant there were no inner orders, no spiritual directions from within. One day around 1961, Yoga Swami was alone in his hut when S. Shanmugasundaram, a close devotee, arrived from Colombo. Entering an empty room, the visitor wondered for a moment if Swami was away. Suddenly, Yoga Swami came through the curtain, his long white hair undone, not tied neatly as he always wore it. Without words, Yoga Swami began to dance, his hair flying wildly with the vigorous movements of his body. Shanmugasundaram stood transfixed. He knew this was a special blessing. It was a blessing he never forgot, and when he spoke of it decades later, he surmised that Yoga Swami was subtly guiding him towards Satguru Shivaya Subramania Swami. The dancer for Shanmugasundaram later became a devotee of Subramania Swami, traveling to America and Mauritius and sharing Yoga Swami's life and teachings there. "Just be. I went to Nalur looking for God," explained Yoga Swami. "I had only one desire, to know God. There I met my Chelapan, the man people called mad, the people who would not admit a second. Through his grace I found out that he and I are one, and I too became one without a second." He said that Chelapa Guru took everything away from him, all desire, all attachments, all ego, and that he then came to a state Yoga Swami called Suma. In Tamil, that word means being still, not having any concern, not knowing. Once he translated it into English as active awareness. Summa is the threshold of inner life. If there are desires and attachments, Summa cannot be held for more than a few seconds. But once it has been touched, desires and attachments begin to dissolve, and this state becomes easier and easier to hold. The mind's awareness is actively poised in stillness. Finally, when Summa is held long enough, higher experiences begin to come and refine themselves, until the self only remains. Yogaswami had another way of pointing to the same result. Meditate, I am Shiva, then the state of Shiva without attributes will come. Swami gave different people different sadhanas, spiritual disciplines they could follow if they wanted to attain the state of Summa. Gaurabala Swami, German Swami, sat on the veranda of Shivaya Subramania Swami's ashram in Alavedi and told this story to young seekers from America visiting Jaffna in the early 1970s. A natural raconteur, the white-bearded cigar-smoking elder sat cross-legged on the concrete floor and told of his struggles with the intellect and Yogaswami's constant efforts to get him to quiet his mind, to get him to reach into the depths of spiritual experience. But, he said, the mind has a way of its own. I could not reach that thoughtless state my guru pointed to. I could not subdue the mental movements. Saying that, he lifted his right arm, held it out at shoulder height for his young audience to see. There, on his forearm, was a 1-inch high tattoo that read Summa Iru. In crudely drawn Tamil, Summa Iru is what mothers say to silence their boisterous children, as English-speaking mothers plead, be still. I put this tattoo on my arm to remind myself every day of my guru's teachings, of my sadhana. Imagine the power of a master who can give you 2 words to follow and you spend the rest of your life working to fulfill them. That was Yogaswami. To one he gave the prescription, the kingdom of God is within you, meditate on that and go to the top. To another he said, work without working, worship without worshipping, eat without eating, wash without washing, walk without walking. When you can do that, then you will know Summa, and everything else will come to you. He spoke often to the importance of doing all one's work as an expression of service to God, which he called Shiva Thandu. Let whatever work you do, my son, be an offering to the Lord. He would often end darshan sessions with a devotee or family with the admonition, now go and do your work, he wrote. We are the servants of Shiva. We are lacking in nothing. Our work is to do Shiva Thandu. It is for that alone that we are living in this world. The moon is doing Shiva Thandu. The sun and all the planets are performing the same holy service. In like manner, the Devas, Ashuras, Kinnaras, Kimpurushas, and Vidyadharas are all ever doing Shiva Thandu. Everything is the work of Shiva. Without him, not an atom can move. We lose nothing, we gain nothing. We are as we have always been. There is not one equal to us or superior to us. For us there is no good or evil, no birth or death, no like or dislike. We are free of desires for land and gold and woman. The devilish mind is absent for us. We are not concerned with matters of time and space. We live as the witness of everything. Om Tat Sat Om. Shiva Thandu was one of 2 medicines he most frequently administered. Another was Shivajnana, meditation on Shiva. Yogaswami explains its importance in the following short upadesha called tapas. The senses drag down to unlimited depths, even those who have done great tapas. Consequently, to overcome them, you must practice Shivajnana. Only by that means can they be brought under control. Therefore do this meditation uninterruptedly. Whenever one dwells on sense impressions, attachment arises. From attachment springs desire. From desire, anger. From anger, delusion. And delusion causes one's downfall. Therefore, guard yourself by Shivajnana. Because of our pettiness, our true nature is obscured and we stray from the path of Dharma. To free oneself from error and to make oneself steadfast, Shivajnana is the best means. Though we may possess great wealth in this world, and though we may have the power to make even celestial beings serve us, we still cannot control our senses. Therefore, invoking the grace of God, restrain the mind from wandering along the path of the senses. It is precisely this that great sages have called tapas. If this is neglected, even though you may perform ostentatious sacrifices and such things, you will never achieve firmness. Yogaswami gave no formal classes, lectures, or seminars, but he taught every day spontaneously, at his hut in the mornings and evenings, in the bazaar or the streets, or at a devotee's home during a surprise visit. Usually his words were addressed to the needs and problems of one individual, but everyone present benefited. Many came to Yogaswami wanting to renounce the world and go into the jungle to meditate. He only gave blessings to one or two of them, ordering all others to fulfill their svadharma in the world, commanding that they do the best they knew how with detachment. His attitude was that all of life must be regarded as spiritual, knowing it is foolhardy to divide one's activities into sacred and secular. He would convey this strongly to the many souls who came seeking blessings to give up their jobs so they would have more time for spiritual life. One day a young man came to him, beseeching permission to renounce the world and strive for God realization. Yogaswami did not speak, he just sat there. The man pleaded and pleaded, saying it was the only thing in the world that he wanted to do, and he needed the blessing of his guru before undertaking this mission. Yogaswami remained silent. The man begged insistently, desperately imploring that he could not live without the Satguru's blessings. He would kill himself if Swami withheld his approval. He pleaded and begged for a long time. Swami did not respond, acting as if he were alone in the room. Finally, the man left. Yogaswami later explained to the devotees present that the man's wife had just run off with another man, and he thought he could escape the humiliation he felt by retreating into the jungle. If it had been his natural development, I could not have helped but give my blessing. Whenever people were unduly hard on themselves undertaking disciplines that were too severe, Swami would stop them. The body is a temple, the mind is a sanctum. You must keep them pure and clear. You need them to do your work. Do not destroy them or harm them. Turning to a devotee sitting at his feet, he said, "As you walked into the room, it felt cool and fresh because you are on the path and have begun to feel the presence of the Atma. Some people come and I feel hot and there is no air in the room. That is because they are here to trick me and think they can cheat me out of something. You are searching and have no selfish motives. You come just to sit here. You can feel the same peace from me. That is why you come. It is good for people on the path to sit with one another. More often than not, I feel I am in the presence of God. You must treat that feeling you have of the presence of God as you would a little child. Nurture it, give it everything it needs. If you see it as a child, you become helpless. You must obey its every wish and do exactly as it bids you. Just as a mother knows in every instance what to do for her child, knows the meaning of its cries and gives it what it needs, so does the presence make itself felt to the devotee. You must carefully nurture the awareness of God that is growing within you. If you do, it will grow, and without your knowing it, you will have disappeared, and only that will be. Time and again Yogaswami spoke of Shiva, of worshipping the holy feet, of the path of spiritual discipline and love, as seen here in his song entitled, "Worship the Feet of the Lord." If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That will make you realize that all you see is transient. That will show the way to subdue the body. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That will make you rule the mind that treads the senses path. That will daily repeat the letters 5 in your heart. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That will surely by degrees extirpate all anger. That will accept all mistakes as blessings in disguise. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That will remove and drive away all the 3 desires. That will reveal the holy feet which neither come nor go. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That will keep you ever in the state of being Summa. That will make you realize compassion for the poor. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That sets you in the open void and takes away all sorrow. That will see both Vedanta and Siddhanta as one. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. That will control the fickle mind which cannot be controlled. That will give the vision where there is no night or day. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. This song of Yoganathan will show the righteous path. It will nourish you with nectar for all the days you live, and to know Aham Brahmasmi is the crown that it will give. If you always offer worship to the Almighty's holy feet, then you will have peace. Markandeya Swami, a close devotee of Yoga Swami from the time they met in 1931, was a lifelong bachelor who wanted to renounce the world and take sannyasa in the middle of his career. Yoga Swami told him to continue his profession as a surveyor. Finally, when Markandeya Swami's retirement came at age 60, Yoga Swami surprised him by arranging for a kutir to be built among a small coconut grove in the village of Kaithadi, a hut with one room and an open porch, a concrete floor with walls and roof of woven palm fronds. He settled his disciple there and looked after him for years. His foremost sadhana, a difficult one they say, was to speak only the words of his guru, so everyone who spent an hour with him would hear again and again, Yoga Swami said. Yoga Swami taught us. He was amazingly faithful to this discipline of not giving out his own wisdom, though he was deeply endowed, standing on his porch or perched on a raised neem seat with 4 posts and a canopy. He would explain excitedly that Yoga Swami gave him the following sadhana, his indirect way of inviting seekers to control their own minds. Sit in one place, do not move, watch where your mind goes, watch the fellow. First he'll be in Kandy, then go to Colombo, then to Jaffna, all in a fraction of a second. Keep track of every place he goes. If he goes 100 places and you have caught only 99, you fail. As you progress in this sadhana, you will begin to pick up things coming from within. Then you get messages from inside. You must deliver them to those who need to know. It will be a great help to them. On one Mahashivaratri evening, Yoga Swami paid a surprise visit to Markandeya Swami's hut and told the old sadhu, "We shall observe the Mahashivaratri Vrata with meditation only." That night, for them, there was no pujas, no chanting of Nachintanai, Agamas, or Puranas, only meditation and absolute silence. T. Shiva Yogapathy shared. Markandeya Swami was a man of few words and avoided involving himself in the public life. He knew the whole corpus of Nachintanai songs by heart and always quoted Nachintanai when talking about Hinduism and spiritualism. Yoga Swami is said to have told devotees, "Markandeya Swami is my compass to you all. He shall show you all the spiritual directions," this being an indirect reference to Markandeya Swami's career as a surveyor. Markandeya Swami attained Mahasamadhi on May 29, 1984. Yoga Swami moved about as a beneficent sage, shopping for fresh food at the market, visiting devotees' homes, sharing in their lives, uplifting them with his blessings. T. Shiva Yogapathy tells of his experience from the 1950s and 60s. Swami used to visit our residence, Tilaivasa, at Sangarathai frequently and spend a full day there. He used to come early in the morning after doing vegetable marketing, arriving at our place around 8 a.m. Around 8:30, Swami, my beloved father, and myself commonly took our rover car to the nearest seashore, namely Tiruvadi Nilai, and all of us would enjoy bathing in the sea and return home. On arrival at home, we would have bath again with well water. Later, we all assembled in our large prayer room. Swami was seated at the center of the room as we all observed prayers while chanting from Shiva Puranam, as per Swami's instruction. In the meantime, my mother, Thayanayaki, was preparing lunch for all of us, cooking all the fresh vegetables Swami had brought in the morning. Before the meal, Swami would chant the food blessing bhajana song. Then we all sat with him and had lunch. After the meal, Swami would compliment my mother and bless her by saying, "Thayanayaki, Taye, you have provided a full and tasty lunch for this beggar. Live well." The devout went to great lengths to assure Swami's visits. There was a famous VSSK vegetarian cafe situated just 200 yards from the start of KKS Road. The owner, Mr. VSS Kumaraswamy, had been enamored of Swami, who frequented the cafe for coffee in the mornings or lunch at midday. Farther north on KKS Road were the well-stocked herbal medical stalls, namely Subramaniam Medical Shop next to VSSK Cafe and Nalathambi Medical Shop, where Yogaswami would stop frequently for casual chats. Just before reaching Vanarapani Vatiswaran, Thayalnayaki Shivan Temple, on the same side of the road stood the popular vegetarian cafe Thamathara Vilas. The founder, Thamathara Iyer, encouraged Yogaswami to take his lunch here. He was clever in his approach. By the side of the cafe there stood a vacant shop owned by Mr. S.R. Kandia, a devotee of Yogaswami, who maintained the inside impeccably, complete with a simple bed, always ready for Yogaswami should he need to rest and relax during one of his daily treks, especially following a free midday meal at the cafe. Close to the earth, in 1960 Yogaswami expressed his wish to have a second Shivathandan Nilayam established in Chenkalada near Setandi in the Batikalawa district. In 1910, during his pilgrimage to Kataragama, he stayed in the town for 3 days at the home of Mr. Velupillai, so the place had special significance to him. Whenever he was in Batikalawa, Swami visited the Sitandi Murugan temple. In accordance with his wishes, the society established a center there in 1965. On the inaugural day, devotees carried a pair of his sandals 300 kilometers from the KKS Road center by foot in a parade. T. Shiva Yogapathy gives a glimpse of activities at the Nilayam. When Swami decided to have a Nilayam at Chenkaladi, some devotees of Swami donated land for it. Later, after the Nilayam was built, paddy fields were also gifted so that rice could be cultivated. Sanda Swami managed the Nilayam and worked the paddy fields. He used to drive the four-wheel tractor through the paddy fields for plowing. In the year 1967, I had a great opportunity to visit the Nilayam with my beloved father, a Thilyam Palam, and observed how active Sanda Swami was in his daily Shivathandu. It was Shiva Swami's intention that the Nilayam should cater food and provide shelter for pilgrims to Kataragama temple, whom he held deep sympathy for, having suffered many hardships on his own journey to the remote jungle shrine in 1910. Srimath Sanda Swami, Solbury Swami, tried his best to implement Yogaswami's vision, but could not succeed due to poor response from the public. However, paddy cultivation was done for some years due to the good efforts of Sanda Swami, who served there from 1965 to 1977. Like the Jaffna Center, the Nilayam in Chenkaladi was established with the same strict rules of conduct as a place of meditation and prayer, but Yogaswami had specified for the Batikalawa Center a stronger emphasis on service and on cultivating food to feed those in need. Inthumathi Amma tells about Yogaswami's unique vision of this place. Just as the Jaffa Shivathandan Center is conducive to meditation, the Chenkaladi Shivathandan Center is directed towards service. In the plan drawn up according to Yogaswami's wishes, there was another temple-like structure on the western side. This was to be used to house celibate students and recluses. Recluses who had religious knowledge and knowledge of other arts, who were well experienced and of good conduct, were to reside there and teach others like them. Fertile fields were obtained in which the acolytes were to work hard, cultivate food, and thus be useful to others. This Shivathandu would help in getting rid of their egoism, helping them to forget the I and live in unison with the we. Swami said that men who grow in this atmosphere will have bodies that exude good religious conduct and faces exuding the strength of mental peace. He visualized them meditating in the hall under the trees amidst the fields, guiding the world through their silence while sitting, walking, and working. The fulfillment of this idea of Yoga Swamis depends on those who are prepared to sacrifice themselves fully in the pursuit of self-realization. Yoga Swami expressed that it is not the aim of the Shivathandan to indulge in propaganda, to press people, or to go about lecturing. Chapter 18. Yoga Swami's Final Years. During Swami's later years in the early 1960s, there was trouble between the two ethnic communities who live in Sri Lanka, the Tamils and the Sinhalese, between whom a rivalry has persisted for centuries. The Sinhalese Buddhists are a majority. At that time, they were attempting to make their language, Sinhala, the official language of the country. Because of this effort and its implications, riots sprang up at different places all through the country. These conflicts came and went for years. On February 21, 1961, Yoga Swami had, as usual, left the ashram in the morning and walked to Vanarapanai. Passing the old Dutch fort, where people were fighting in the streets, he witnessed firsthand the violence and bloodshed. Solemn and withdrawn, he walked back to his hermitage, reaching there around noon. Usually upon returning to his hut, he washed his feet and gave his hands and face a scrubbing at the well on the other side of the road, where everyone washed before entering the compound. This day, however, he just got down from the car and walked directly through the gate past his hut and into the pasture 60 yards or so to the cattle shed where Vali, his cow, was tethered. He offered her a few bananas, as he often did, and petted her affectionately, despite the fact that Mr. Tirunavukarasu's daughter had warned him 2 days earlier not to go near that Vali cow, due to her feisty demeanor the past few days. Suddenly, Vali threw her head toward him, as playful bovines are wont to do, striking Swami with the strength of her 1,000-pound frame. 88 years old and frail, Swami was thrown to the ground. Unable to get up, he would later discover that his left hip had been broken by the fall. Fortunately, Mr. Balakumar and his wife, who had come to visit Swami and were waiting at his ashram, witnessed the accident and came running to help. They called a neighbor and urgently told him to convey the news to Mr. Tirunavukarasu, who was at the bank where he worked, and Mr. Tivendram at his bookshop. Tivendram summoned Mr. K. Brahmananda, and they all rushed to the site. Placing Swami on a makeshift stretcher, they carried him to Mr. Brahmananda's van and sped to Jaffna Hospital. Mr. A. Thilyampalam, who also had been alerted, joined them there, and by phone conveyed the news to devotees in Colombo. The next morning, 20 devotees flew from Colombo, including 2 surgeons, Dr. V. Rasanayagam and Dr. A. J. Anthonys. Yoga Swami was given a private room and the best of care. The moment he entered the hospital, it turned into a temple. Devotees gathered around and waited for news of his condition, singing quietly his favorite songs from Nachintanai and Shiva Puranam. That evening, Dr. V. Rasanayagam, an orthopedic surgeon, operated on Swami's hip. He said afterwards that Swami would not be able to walk, though his hip would heal. During Swami's stay, 5 doctors looked after him in turns: Dr. C. Guruswami, Dr. S. Ramanathan, Dr. V. T. Pasupathy, Dr. S. A. Vetivelu, and Dr. N. Walupillai. Someday you will understand. A concern arose that he sleep soundly and not move at all that night. The doctors gathered around him and explained how important it was that he remain still so the healing could begin. Swami regarded the injury much differently than they did, saying, "Oh, you think it is important. To me it is nothing." Because of their concern and insistence, however, he agreed to receive a sleep-inducing drug. The doctors gave the injection, telling him it would make him sleep until 8 in the morning. Yoga Swami fell fell into a sound sleep right away, and the doctors thought they had achieved their goal, but at about 4 in the morning he awakened. Every morning after that he awoke early. By 4 o'clock he was sitting quietly, and people slowly gathered. Everyone came, doctors, nurses, and devotees. From about 4:30 they were singing and chanting. Devotees burned incense and camphor. Sometimes Yogaswami spoke to them. Often he asked visitors to sing or chant from a certain scripture. At about 5:45 he ordered everyone to go to their work and asked his attendants to clean the room and straighten the sheets. At 6 each morning an English nun came in to look after his medical needs, and he wanted everything to be just the way she would expect it. He made sure the ashes from the incense were cleaned up and the bed was properly made. Greeting him, she would say, "Hello, Father, how are you today?" He responded, "Good morning, Mother." One day he asked when she had time to pray. She answered, "My work is my prayer. What I do with my hands, Father, is my prayer." "We are also like that," he responded. "That way we stay pure so that God within us can work through us." When he mentioned God within, she held her hands over her ears, indicating that she just did not see God within, and would not even hear of such an idea. Yogaswami laughed. "Oh, that's all right. Someday you will understand." In the evening, after the main work of the hospital was finished, people again gathered in Swami's room to sing and sit within his darshan. They lit lamps and again burned incense and camphor. Yogaswami had always been immediate and vibrant, a dynamic presence to all who came to him. Some grew fearful in that incredible presence. Others experienced it as a motherly compassion. He was aware of every aspect of their lives. After his accident, though, he spent more and more time within, and was outwardly softer and remote. He had a luminance that made those around him feel as if he were in a celestial realm. Even those whom he had treated harshly before he now greeted with gentleness. Sometimes Yogaswami would slip into contemplation and forget his body altogether. It was then that people began to realize that Swami had veiled his presence while he was with them as fully and as successfully as he said Chelapaguru had hidden his. Just from the way he was during these times, devotees could glimpse the true nature of the Guru. Pointing to his body, he would say, "You must not think of this person as the Guru. The Guru is vastly different from this." A devotee wrote of visiting Swami in the hospital, recounting what Swami said about his injury. "I went to see him in the hospital with my father-in-law. While in the car on our way, my father-in-law told me that Yogaswami's condition was deteriorating. I replied, 'He is superhuman, and such incidents occur only to show the world how one should face any adversity in life.' On our arrival, Yogaswami clasped the doctor's hand and said, 'Raja, you think that I am very ill, don't you? There is nothing wrong with me. The body which did the bad deed is paying the penalty.' That he said with his leg in bandages, his mind so detached that his face was as fresh as a new rose." In words of our master, Swami elaborates on the above theme. "This illness is a gift. Karma must be gone through. I have no connection whatever with this body. This body brought with it the seed of all else in life. Illness is part of it. People who understand the cause of this will merely note this as the end of all suffering, and remain undisturbed. The ignorant become restless and sad. When devotees anguished aloud about his condition, Yogaswami consoled, 'Do you think you can forestall my karma?' They realized that from his perspective all was in perfect order, and their best help to him was to be a loving witness to his condition. When people began blaming the cow, Yogaswami stopped them. We put ourselves in Vali's way. It was not she who did what was settled in the beginning. Many devotees believe Swami foresaw that the Tamil community was going to face many problems and hardships in the future, and through his injury intentionally took some of their suffering on himself in an effort to ease the horrific karmas he anticipated. S. Shanmugasundaram said that years earlier, when someone asked Swami why he didn't take medicine for his ailments, or why he got ill at all, Yoga Swami replied, "I could die now if I wanted to, just close my eyes and in a short time be dead." But he said he had a few more things to do, and he still needed to overcome anger a little bit. He wanted to go permanently when he died and not come back, so he was making sure he left nothing undone. Swami gradually recovered his strength and began to move about in a comfortable wooden wheelchair and a walker. Sandaswami had airlifted from the UK a modern stainless steel chair for him, but he preferred the old-fashioned one. During his recuperation in the hospital, devotees worked day and night to build a new hermitage for him on the north side of his old hut. Similar in size to the thatched hut, it had concrete walls and floor, a clay tile roof, wheelchair access, indoor plumbing, electric lighting, a proper bed, and other conveniences that Swami would need when he returned from the hospital. In fact, the doctors would not release him until the building was finished. We learned silence in his presence. In June of 1961, after 3 months in Jaffna General Hospital, Swami returned to Kolumbathurai and moved into his new hermitage. People took turns caring for him. There was always someone on duty to look after Swami's needs, and Dr. Raja Karuna visited the ashram every morning to do physical therapy for Swami. In spite of this, he never regained the ability to walk. As his strength returned, Swami would take excursions in his wheelchair. He was often sighted kilometers from his hermitage in his chair, pushed by Shiva Yogeswaran, nephew of Mr. Tirunavukarasu. He also moved about freely by car in the mornings. At noon he would have lunch and then take a nap until 4 p.m. In the evenings he received devotees in the ashram. A special activity each weekend was driving to the beach. He especially loved to visit the seaside in those days. It seemed to give him physical solace. A. Thiliampalam and his teenage son, T. Shiva Yogapathy, would arrive in their rover with their driver at 4:30 p.m. The son's duty was to sponge Swami's body, dress him for the outing, and ever so slowly move him into the wheelchair for the short ride to the road. Swami sat in the front seat with the driver as they drove to the beach. Once there, they parked the car with doors wide open and the skylight pulled back so he could enjoy the sea breeze. From the seaside, Swami and his hosts proceeded to Shivathanda Nilayam, where, from the car, he would call Chelathurai over for a short talk. Typically, they proceeded to Nalur Temple. Parked at a distance in front of the Teradi, Swami sang Shiva Puranam and worshipped. Money, coconuts, and camphor were sent inside the temple in a basket so that a special puja could be performed, invoking the blessings of the deity. As sadhus and others invariably approached, Swami personally handed a plantain to each one, while on the other side of the car, Thiliampalam reached into his coin purse, carefully prepared for just this moment, and gave each one a coin, 10 or 50 rupees, a generous sum, as in those days an ample meal could be purchased with a single rupee. This maintained the pattern until January of 1964. People were no longer afraid of the once fearsome sage, and many who had not dared approach him earlier now came. Often he sent them to the Shivathanda Nilayam. Increasingly, efforts were made to ensure Swami's comfort. His legs were swollen with excess fluid, and it helped if someone rubbed them. He allowed only a few men to massage his legs, and they considered it such a blessing that they would have massaged forever if he had not sensed their fatigue and asked them to stop. Ratnama Navaratnam gives us a glimpse into these final years. Swami's sacrificial illness from 1961 to 1964 lit an unquenchable flame of devotion amongst his devotees, whence came the realization that even bhakti could be just as imperfect as karma or dhyana. We learned to be silent in his presence and awaited the manna that fell from his lips. Day was indistinguishable from night, and the play of opposites preyed less and less on our captive minds, released to enjoy serene peace. Swami would take us backwards and forwards. He would call many illuminating reminiscences of Chilapa Swami, his peerless Guru Nathan. The resonant voice of the Guru became softened with love in his last days on earth. He would call upon the Divine Mother, Devi Thayalnayaki, and avow that she abides in the conscious core of each one's heart, and would therefore know each one's pain and pleasure intimately, and would swiftly respond to the call of her unswerving children. He would make us sing the 4 lines on Thayalnayaki for hours together. Was she no other than the beloved Guru, the healer of all life's ills and forebodings? Can it be the supreme identity hailed by the sacred scriptures? Doing pujas and abhishekams at Nellore Temple and at the Vanarpanai by Theswaran, Thayalnaki Shivan Temple was a prescription he often gave in these last 3 years at the ashram. Another was to conduct Padayatra, pilgrimage by foot from Shivathanda Nilayam to Nellore Temple and then to his ashram. He told devotees to study the Kanda Puranam in temples and in homes. As his Mahasamadhi approached, Swami arranged for the study of the Markandeya Padalam, a chapter of the Kanda Puranam, in a style of teaching in which one person sings the poet's verses and another sings the explanation in his own words. At that session, Thambaya, a teacher, rendered the explanations. Swami attended this kind of spiritual discourse off and on and encouraged others to do likewise. 1 month before his Mahasamadhi, foreseeing the hardships ahead, Yoga Swami cried out in a loud voice, "O Thayalnayaki Amma, please bless and save the Tamils from the hardships they will undergo in the future. They will find it difficult to have even a cup of rice porridge per person per day," he decreed. "All Tamils must start paddy cultivation and agriculture to cultivate various grains in order to manage food during difficult times." That visit to the future proved uncannily accurate, as the entire Sri Lankan Tamil community learned 20 years later, when the ethnic war broke out, bringing with it 30 years of conflict, hunger, and suffering. 3 photographs were taken of Yoga Swami when he returned from the hospital, captured by a devotee who knew that soon he would no longer be on this plane. They were among a handful taken throughout his life, as he generally did not allow photos to be taken of him. Many people thought they had managed to get a photo, only to have the negatives emerge from the developing room blank. Only these taken as he sat on his bed, and 2 taken by 19-year-old Sami Pasupati in 1951, had his blessing. These 5, and 1 more taken as he walked away from the camera, umbrella held above his head, were the only known photos captured during his long life. In 2006, Sami Pasupati told of taking his photos. At that time we had no photograph of Swamiji to pray to. Many people had attempted to take a photo and had failed. One day, while Yoga Swami was staying at our home, my mother, Tamilamayar, said to me, "Tomorrow morning when Swamiji is saying his prayers, why don't you take a photo of him?" I was frightened that he might scold me. Mother said, "Don't worry, if he scolds you, I will take responsibility." The next morning at 6:30, Mother woke me up saying, "Swamiji is praying now. You are not to go inside the room where he is meditating, but you can take the photo from outside." I took a picture. Later, when he was having his breakfast, Swamiji asked, "Did anyone come into my room?" My mother responded, "No, no," and then kept quiet. Later, when we were seated with him outside, my mother said, "Swami, we have made a big blunder." Swami replied, "You couldn't have made a mistake." He had known her since she was a little girl. "We took a picture of you without your permission," she confessed. At that, Swami was silent, and we were a bit worried about what he would say. Then he burst out laughing, which greatly relieved us. Then I asked, "Swamiji, can I take another picture of you?" He answered, "You have already taken one. There is no need to take another." Having said that, a minute later he volunteered, "All right, you have taken one. No harm in taking another." So while he was seated in the chair on the porch, I took a picture. Every attempt to record his voice also failed. People would receive his blessings to record a song he was leading, and everything in the room could be heard in the recording except Swami's voice, even though he was singing the loudest. I have never forgotten this and never will. Every once in a while, beginning in December of 1963, special alerts were out. One day, Yogaswami said he saw the time coming when he would leave his body. He asked a close devotee to call the others. People came from Colombo and the eastern province, traveling long distances to be there for their guru's Mahasamadhi. The Shastras say that when a guru or a saint leaves his body, he gives forth a Shakti greater than any other time in his life, so devotees came anticipating extraordinary blessings. Also, they were deeply attached to him and came with sad faces. When a large group had gathered, Swami just looked at them and laughed, then sent them away. After that, he would be fine for days and weeks at a time, and would go on long rides in automobiles. Mr. Thivandram, Mr. Kasupillai Navaratnam, Mr. Kathirgesan, and Mr. Rajendram, with their families, regularly brought their car to Kalumbathurai to take Swami for rides.